They still call me the Penguin.
Hey, welcome back. And our special guest, Art Shamsky, will be receiving a beautiful fruit gift basket courtesy of our friends at Melissa's Produce. Melissa's is the proud partner of We'll See About That. Be sure to use my VIP code RONSAY when checking out at melissas.com. It gives me a great pleasure today to have a guy that played Major League Baseball a little bit before my time. He was a Cincinnati Red, he was a New York Met, he was a Chicago Cub, and he was an Oakland A, covering 13 years. And our special guest today is Art Shamsky. Art, welcome to the show. Great to have you. How is the new year treating you so far?
Well, I sure hope it's better. First of all, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much. I sure hope it's better than last year. Last year was a really tough year in terms of some tragedies. I lost 5 members of that '69 team last year, and a couple other players I played with and against. Of course, I came up with Cincinnati, and I was real friendly with Pete Rose. We started our careers together way back in 1960 in a small town, upstate New York, Geneva, New York, in the New York Penn League, and I spent 8 years with that organization before I got traded to the Mets, and so that was a shock. So hopefully 2025 will be a little bit better. I've got my fingers crossed, but you get to a certain point in your life at a certain age, and you get these calls all the time now. It's sort of like the way of life, and so just hope they're not as much as last year.
Well, I certainly hope that plays out for you, and I hope it plays out for the rest of us too. Last year was a difficult year, I think, for many, many people, and so far out here in Southern California hasn't started out too well for some either. All these terrible storm fires, the wind creating havoc. Another story to be told. But how did a guy growing up in St. Louis, Missouri? Where was your first thought of possibly taking on the life of a professional baseball player?
Well, I grew up in an area that really developed a lot of players who went on to have professional careers. Some never made it to the big leagues, but a lot did. There's so many guys that I grew up with and played against that eventually ended up somewhere along the line playing against me or in the big leagues. And the programs were just really good. I knew that I could play from the time that I started playing. My dad, took me out when I could walk and started soft tossing with me, but I never. I dreamed of being, I was a big Cardinal fan. Stan Musial was my idol. I wouldn't go to bed at night until his last at bat or the game was over.
Yeah.
And I'd sit there and I just throw the ball up in the air and catch it in my glove. And, you dream of those things, but you never really know what's going to happen. And back in those days, Ron, it was only 16 teams when I signed. And so the chances of making it were really slim. And then when I was in the minor leagues, they expanded to 20 teams in 1962. That's when the Mets came in, and I was in the minor leagues with the Reds organization, and so that gave some of us a little more opportunity to probably make it because it just, when I first signed, just wasn't a lot of room. And I remember one spring training, I went to the spring training with the Reds after having a real good year in AAA, 1963, and Fred Hutchinson was the manager, and Frank Robinson was in the outfield, Vada Pinson, Rose was there now, Tommy Harper, a lot of Darren Johnson, a lot of really good players. And I remember I had a really good spring, and I thought I was going to make the team. And Freddie Hutchinson called me in, and he said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. You had a good spring, you had a good year, but there's no room." So I had to go back to AAA, spend another year. But the good news was I was playing in San Diego in the minor leagues before it became a big league city, and I went back there and had another good year, and then finally made it in 1965. But it was difficult back in those days because there just wasn't a lot of room, and a lot of guys that I played with and against in the minors, I said these guys can't miss, and yet they were in the same position as me. So the reality of it was I dreamed of making it, but you just really never knew or never know until it actually happens. And I was lucky enough to make the team at the end of '64, and then '65 was my first full year at Cincinnati, and then spent 3 years in the big leagues before I got traded over to the Mets.
You hit a few nerves with me by repeating some of those things that happened in your past. I have familiarity with a lot of those names. Played for Frank Robinson in Puerto Rico right before I made it to the big leagues. He was my manager there. You talk about Pete, know Pete well, knew Pete well. You talk about getting sent back after a big year in AAA. Boy, I have firsthand information about all that. I finished up 1971 hitting 329 with 32 home runs and 123 runs batted in, got called up, had a cup of coffee for a couple of pinch hit at bats, and I was designated pretty much the starting third baseman until heard otherwise, and I got sent back. I had to go do it all over again. And I responded, but I know the difficulty of which you also played with the number of teams that were playing when you started out. I remember just the American League and the National League. And
Well, I think, Ron, when people ask me about the game today, and I never want to put the game down, but I think the thing that we look back on what happened to us, and I just think when we couldn't make it because there wasn't that many teams, the fact that we went back and played against guys who were in the same position as us, they were terrific players, couldn't make it because there was no room. So you developed your game accordingly because they couldn't make it, you couldn't make it, but you were playing against this really good talent. If I told you some of the teams in that Pacific Coast League that I played against, some of the pitchers that I played against, it was incredible. And so if you didn't do well, you were just phased out. So I think in the long run it helped because you were playing against guys that had the same kind of problems as you. And then once you got to the big leagues, I think you were much more ready than guys today. I think guys are rushed to the big leagues today. They don't play against quality players in the minor leagues, and I think they get overmatched by not so much even great pitchers, but just mediocre pitchers. I'm talking about hitters in particular. And I think by not playing against some of these guys for a couple of years in the minor leagues, I think it really hurts them because in the long run, because I just think they're not ready to play. On the other hand, they got the opportunity to make a lot of money, and the reality of it is they're in the big leagues, and so it is what it is. But I think we paid our dues, and I've got no regrets about that.
I think you're right about a lot of that, Art. I experienced the same thing. I was very disappointed about being sent back to have to go do something over again, of which I got an A in that class. I should be able to go to grad school, right? And the next year was I made it a beneficial year. I became more selective. I had a chance to hone my skills one more time. And I think it was beneficial. We had a terrific team. We played against terrific talent. The Philly teams of the future, the Giant teams of the future were the guys that I were playing against. So having to go back, I was sure disappointed about it. But it helped me get on top of my game a little bit quicker my rookie year. And once I got the opportunity, then it was lights out. And
I think that you're a perfect example of what I was talking about. You ended up having a great career, and yes, you would have liked to have gotten there sooner. But the reality was maybe whatever happened to you honed your skills even more, made you a little bit more prepared to get to the big leagues. I mean, I look back again on those years, particularly in AAA. Like the Dodgers, for example, when you got great experience with the Dodgers. I mean, they were in Spokane, Washington, and their team was Don Sutton, Phil Ortega, Pete Rickert, and Bill Singer. That was their starting pitching staff, and so about all those guys. And so,
sure do.
mean, there was so many teams that had great pitchers and great players, and they were held back because there was just no room. Now, there's 30 teams now, and so in '62 they expanded to 20, and then '69 they expanded to 24. Now there's 30, and I've heard rumors they're going to expand to maybe two more teams. So the opportunities to get to the big leagues are so much greater. But the downside is I think guys are rushed to the big leagues, and I don't think they're ready for prime time, and it is what it is. But it's also being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the last year of fine tuning gave me an opportunity to see, in particular, the cut fastball and some veteran pitchers that were more crafty than velocity, and it was an experience that I look back on quite nicely with. All right, we're going to have take a break here, and we're going to be back with our special guest Art Shamsky right after this.
Nice job, gentlemen. All right, here we go for number two. This is going to be segment two that we're doing. It's actually segment three, but we're going to call it number two. This one is going to be 12 minutes. 12 minutes, music in, music out. Stand by for cue, stand by for elements, gentlemen.
Hello, Ron Save. Okay, we are back, and we have Art Shamsky, our special guest today. And Art, I want to kind of continue along this line. We talk about honing our skills, getting making sure that when we get there, we're going to stay there. And who are your influences early? You mentioned that you were a roommate of Pete Rose early on in the minor leagues. How did that influence wear off on you? Who are some other players that you felt like you gained some great knowledge and experience for?
Well, we started our career way back in 1960. We were all just turned 18 years old. Tony Perez was on that team, and of course, Tony's in the Hall of Fame. And we were on this team, Reds minor league team, Geneva. It was Geneva Reds in the New York Penn League. And I tell you, the three of us at the time, I think we were more suspects than prospects. We were so bad as a team,
Yeah.
we got our manager fired. And what's interesting about that whole scenario is that. I think at the time nobody really thought we were going to develop. Again, we were thrown into all these players who were in the same situation. But at that time, Cincinnati had two Class D teams, and the next year they moved me up to Class B in Topeka, Kansas, and they kept both Pete and Tony in Class D. And if you would have saw Pete play in 1960, you would have said, "There's no way he's ever going to make it to the big leagues, let alone go on to have the career he had." And something happened from that next year on, and we were together in 1962 in Macon, Georgia, of all places, in the Sally League. And he had transformed his career from being probably somebody that only ran hard to first base after a walk into a really good player. Ended up leading the league in hitting, and then next year made the Reds in spring training, and the rest of history. But we were all young kids, and that organization at the time, like the Dodgers in the past, was developing so many really good young players. It wasn't really the prelude to the Big Red Machine, but a lot of the players were developing into possibly being on that team into the 70s, which led to the Big Red Machine. And there was guys like Chico Ruiz, I'm saying Mel Queen, Tommy Harper.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of guys that the names you might recognize, who all went on to the big leagues.
Oh yeah, Veda Pinson.
Veda was there, but Veda was already in the big leagues. But
right.
The team itself at the time they'd won the pennant in '61, won and lost in the World Series. But back in those days, anybody that really knows the history of baseball knows there was so many good teams, particularly in the National League, and it was really tough. And so again, just trying to make it, going to the next level. And then we were together again in Macon, Georgia, and then I went to AAA, and then Pete went to the big leagues, and then we were all together again. Tony followed a little bit after Pete went to the big leagues, and then the three of us were together, and we had a really good team at Cincinnati. And then Frank, of course, got traded over to Baltimore after my first year in Cincinnati in 1965, and they gave me an opportunity to play a little bit more in 1966, in which I did. I had a pretty good year. Hit over 20 home runs and only 230 at bats. It was a pretty good ratio. And then
Yes, it is.
ended up getting hurt in '67. That was the first year of me getting hurt, which, as you know, Ron, you got to stay healthy in the game. They'll weed you out. You got to stay healthy. And then turned out I was on the disabled list a couple of times in '67, and then got traded the winter of '67 over to the Mets. And at that time, as you probably know, there was no worse team in baseball than in New York, and the New York Mets. In
Yes,
fact,
I do.
I tell the story that when I heard that I was getting traded, I got the call from general manager, was a guy named Bob Housem. I don't know if that rings a bell for you,
Does.
but he called me, and I had just had a surgery on my back, and I actually thought he was calling to see how I was feeling. And before he could say anything, he said, I said, Mr. Housem, I feel great, really looking forward to next year. And he said, "Oh, well, that's good, because we just traded you this morning." So, the first time you get traded is always a shock. You've been with these guys now 8 years for me.
Yep.
You're friends. You've done things together. So you're in shock. But then once the shock started to wear off, I finally said to him, "Oh, really? I should probably know where I get traded. Where did I get traded?" He said to New York, and I said, "Oh my God, I can balls out of that Yankee Stadium breaking bats. That little right field fence down there, 300 feet. I'm really looking forward to the Yankee Stadium. Who's going to call me from them?" And he said, "Well, no, no, sorry, it's the other team in New York." And I said, "Oh no, the worst team in baseball." You know, Back in those days, if you didn't win 2 out of 3 games in a 3 game series, you had a bad series against the Mets. And I finally got over the shock. And what's really funny is I got a call from Bing Devine, who was the general manager of the Mets, who originally had come from the Cardinals. And he made me feel a lot better. He said, we need some left-hand power. He said all the things that make me feel better. And I said, "That's great, Mr. Devine. Thank you so much. I really appreciate calling." Well, what happened next really shocked me because the next day I picked up the paper and I read where Bing Devine left the Mets to come back to the Cardinals. So I was his last trade after him telling me how great it was. But it turned out to be the best thing that happened for me in my career. I mean, 2 years later, we won the World Series, and I'm still in New York because of it. And it was such an incredible team. And for me, it really changed my life.
Well, it's old home week for me with all these names and experiences. Tony Perez was our first baseman in Santurce, Puerto Rico, when I played winter ball there for Frank Robinson. And so I had a great relationship with him. I watched Veda Pinson play for the Seattle Rainiers in the Coast League back when I was a kid growing up in the Northwest. It was a very special time. Willie Davis was playing for the Spokane Indians. Steve Bilko, Frank Howard. Yeah, it
Great
was.
names.
Yeah,
Those are just great names, and
just
I
great
can
names in
relate to all of
baseball.
them.
Yeah. So now, since you brought up the Mets, here you go. You're now going to be going over there. You're playing for the worst team in baseball. Somehow they are able to turn it around. Tell me what was going on in the city of New York at that point in time with the Mets and how they basically transitioned into this miracle Met team.
Well, my first spring training was 68, and we had just also, besides myself, gotten a couple of really good players from other teams. Tommy Agee came over, Al Weiss, who was utility infielder,
Mm-hmm.
J.C. Martin, the catcher, and it was also Gil Hodges, our
Uh-huh.
manager's first year. Now, I know you know the name
Right.
Gil because of the records he set with the Dodgers in L.A., before L.A., but in Brooklyn and in L.A. And Gil was, I just knew of him, you know, just historically how great a player he was. He had managed the Washington Senators, I guess they were at the time, and they Mets made a trade for him, believe it or not, and he came over, and that was his first year. And I remember the first day in spring training, I had never met him before, but I hadn't knew him of a reputation. And he had this meeting, and he said, "I just want you guys to know that you're not going to be the same old Mets as you've been in the past." Well, I see these veins popping out in his neck, and every time he shook hands with you, his fingers would come up half your wrist. His fingers and hands were so big, and that was the first day of me knowing that it would not be the same New York Mets, even though I hadn't been there before, and even though 1968 we didn't play great, we finished. There was only one division back then. We finished ninth, a half game out of last place. I think Houston finished last, and the next year, of course, they went to division play. But you could sense there was a change. He just said you guys are not going to be the same teams you've been in the past, and you knew it had to change. He just was going to be a no nonsense, no nonsense manager. He managed in the style of Walter Alston. He sat back,
Mm.
made some moves, but you just didn't want to mess with him. He just was a very the tough kind of play. It was in the Marines, so you knew that had something
Yep.
to do with it. But he was a no nonsense guy. And so the next year we come to spring training, and this is the year we win the World Series. Nobody really expected much to change, even though you could see some signs. We had really great young pitching. We had Seaver and we had Kuzman and we had Gentry and we had Ryan and we had Tug McGraw and a few veterans. So you knew we had pitching and we had pretty good defense. And we started out so. We didn't play great to begin with, but you could sense that there was a change happening, and that was really because of Gil Hodges. And as the season went on, we were still going into August, 9 games behind the Cubs. Remember, this is again division play, the first year of division play. We were in the National League East, and we were 9 games behind the Cubs going into the second week of August, and all of a sudden something clicked. We just played an unbelievable baseball, and the key to it was that everybody on that team contributed something. And Gil had this knack for being able to manage by feel. I don't think he could manage in today's game, and probably wouldn't want to. I think he had a sense of feel about players down at the end of the bench where he got everybody involved, and he platooned in 4 or 5 positions, and he just got the most out of everybody. And as we overtook the Cubs towards the third week or so in August, there was just this feeling of what's going to happen next. We're on this roll, and the city of New York now was getting caught up in what was happening. Again, we're the lovable losers that have lost 100 and something games almost every year. And all of a sudden, as we got into September and went into first place, it was just this incredible amount of excitement that the city went through. And again, you have to put it in perspective of what was going on in the city and the country at the time. The war in Vietnam was tearing the country apart. The city of New York was going under financially, socially, morally. Every way you could go under, the city was going under. And what we did is we got people to feel better about their lives, and even if it was just this baseball that was happening, and I think people remember that, and they passed it on from generation to generation. I still do speaking engagement and personal appearances because of being part of that team, and nobody ever talks about the other 12 years when they meet me. Oh yeah, I remember 1969 Mets. Yeah, they don't even talk about the other years, which is fine. But it's for me, it really changed my life getting over to that team, and we went from the lovable losers to world champions, and it was just an incredible experience for all of us for being part of it. There was a trifecta that year. That was the year the Jets won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We won the World Series.
I'm going to have to hold you right there, Art. I'm going to have to hold you right there. We got to take a short break, and then we'll be right back after this message.
Okay.
All right, very nicely done, gentlemen. Okay, here we go for number three total, number 4 in the stack, and this is going to be the last one, Mr. Shamsky. This is going to be 13 minutes with a brief branded feature at the top. Here we go. And we are back. We'll see about that with the legend, champion, and MVP Ron Cey. This week in Dodger history, 1977, the Dodgers swapped first baseman and outfielder Bill Buckner, remember that name, and shortstop Ivan DeJesus to the Cubs for Rick Monday in a trade that would benefit both teams. In subsequent transactions with the Phillies and the Red Sox, respectively, after many productive seasons, Chicago, the team deals players for Ryan Sandberg, a former guest on the We'll See About That show.
All right, we are, and I remember all of that, and that was it was a good trade for all, and I was sad to see Bill Buckner leave. However, back with Art, and I remember, the Miracle Mets. They did take New York by storm. They did have the great pitching staff, and I don't think that Nolan Ryan was necessarily in the rotation at that time. May have came in a little bit later, but I always remember going into New York, and this is a little bit after the fact, but going to New York and facing Seaver, Matlack, and Koosman was no picnic, and they were still celebrating, I think, at that time, their championship in '69. But what a special time that you gave the city of New York. It reminds me of what we were able to do in Chicago in 1984. It had been so long that they had won that it was overwhelming. And what an entertainment treat baseball does for a lot of people trying to escape from the daily rigors.
I absolutely agree with you. What's interesting about that era of baseball and yours as you got into it is that I meet people all the time, and most obviously elderly people who just want to remember and talk about it. It kind of brings back their youth, and for me to be able to, I always get that question, "Don't you wish you were playing now?" And of course, my first reaction is, "Yeah, crazy! I'd love to be making the money they're making." But the fact remains that I wouldn't trade it for that World Series ring that I have with the Mets, and more importantly, or just as important, I played with and against, as you did, some of the greatest players in the history of the game. But from the early '60s to the '70s, I mean, who else? I mean, you got a chance to play against Mays, Aaron, Clemente, Stargell, McCovey, Billy Williams, Rose, Bench. I mean, the list goes on and
On
on
and
and on.
on.
And I was lucky enough to play with and against them. I did I tweeted out the other day, it was Koufax's birthday, Sandy's birthday, and so much respect for his greatness. And I just tweeted out, I think he was 89. I said, "Happy birthday, Sandy Koufax, 89." I said, you used to go on a West Coast trip before San Diego came into the league, and you'd face Gibson and Carlton in St. Louis, then you go to LA and you get Koufax, Drysdale, Sutton, and maybe Claude Osteen, and then you'd go to San Francisco and you get Marichal, Perry, and Mike McCormick, who was winning Cy Young awards. And I said, "Please don't tell me about pitchers today." A little sarcastic remark there,
Yeah, that's a
but
long road trip.
that is a
Yeah,
long road trip.
that is a
If
long
you
road
don't
trip.
get some hits early, there's a good chance you might be coming home over. And then I just saw the other day where great pitcher Bob Field passed away, and he was with the Pirates back in those
Right.
days, and he could throw as good as anybody. But those memories for me of being in those games were just unbelievable, and I look at that era as being so lucky to have been part of it. And again, yeah, would I like to be playing now? Of course, but again, you can't. Life is about timing, and so you can't change things that are there. But I feel very lucky to have been part of that era because I got a chance to play with and against these great players, and for me, a very very special time.
Speaking of playing today, of course, I think we'd all want those $1 billion contracts that are coming down. But Art, what do you think about the state of the game today? Do you think we're going in the right direction with the rules changes, with the platooning of pitchers? What do you think?
I I don't like to knock the game, but I don't like it in some respects. I'm a small guy. I'm a small ball person. Even though I could hit some home runs, I like to get fans involved where they can second guess the manager. Why did he bunt then? Why did he hit and run? Why did he steal? I mean, now that fans go to the game and they just sit back and wait for the big inning. And so I don't even know if anybody's keeping score anymore. I just to me, the thing that I like is that there's action in the game where fans get a chance to be part of it. And the other thing I really don't like, and it is all the strikeouts. Guys strike out 150 times, 175. The worst part of it is they don't care. And you're very rarely going to see a right-handed batter with nobody out and a runner on second try to move the runner over to the third. He's just not going to do it because he doesn't want to give up that at bat because he might hit a home run, and that's the name of the game: home runs and RBIs. So that part of the game I don't like. It's still a great game. It's still a great game for kids. It teaches humility. It teaches you how to deal with adversity, teamwork. And I love working with kids. But the big league game today is tough for me to watch because of the things I just talked about. And I just I wish there was more action. I just wish there was, get the fans involved. And I'm starting to believe that the game itself is secondary to the arenas. Come to Dodger Stadium for the restaurants. Come to Dodger Stadium for the food, the scoreboard, the music, the entertainment, or come to Citi Field for those same things. The game it'll be a game, but these other things are real important, and I'm not sure I'm crazy about that idea.
Well, we're definitely talking the same language. It's a strikeout home run game. We have bullpen games today, which I think is well, for me, it's a glamorized exhibition game, and the pitch clock, which I do agree with. The larger bases, not so much. The runner at second base in extra innings, to me, that's a travesty.
Yeah.
They only implement that the right way when you get to the postseason, and I find that to be 162 games late. There's a lot of important games to be played, and metrically, it will tell you that most teams play about 10% of their games are extra innings. So that's 16 games a year that you have a cookie out at second base with an easy win without having to manufacture anything. And
Yeah,
it's a hard
you're
inning.
right.
It's
It's
just
the
too easy. You play hard for 9 innings and now you give them a cookie. I don't like that at all. But anyway, the stories that you have are right up my alley. You're a little bit before my time, but we cross over, and all those players that you named. That is part of my joy of being able to play in the game with all these great players. Yes, I would be a horrible businessman today if I didn't want to play, but I wouldn't change, much like you didn't want to change my thoughts about. I played in a great era of baseball, and I was extremely fortunate, and we were very dominant in our time there. We were both world champions. That is something that I wish, some of my favorite players would have been able to experience. But what a time we had playing in those days, much different from today's game. Did you have a favorite player growing up? Because I did, and I got to play against mine, which was an unbelievable thrill for me, and that was Willie Mays.
He was it's good. Yeah, I always tell people if Willie wasn't playing in that horrible Candlestick Park, he probably would have hit 800 home runs over his career. It never helped McCovey, but it hurt Mays, especially those Tuesday night and then Friday night games and then day games after. But I hated that ballpark. I've got some interesting stories about facing Marichal when he's kicking that leg way up and the wind's blowing and your eyes are tearing and you got cotton in your ears and the whole thing. But my favorite player was Stan the Man Musial growing up in St. Louis and never got a chance to play against him, but I idolized him as a kid growing up. But I must tell you that I was in awe of a lot of the players that I played against and with and watched them in batting practice and try to look at them doing things and try to follow them and again was lucky enough to play against these great players and with some of the great players and I feel very lucky. I've got no regrets. Yeah, would I like to be playing now? Yes, but the balance is that I've got the World Series ring with that great Met team and get a chance to talk to wonderful people like yourself who reminisce about the game when we knew it, how it was, and how we loved it, and the challenges we face. And you were mentioning it that before about the guys that just they come up, and I just look at them, and I think they're overmatched. They just don't play against good competition, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that's one of the problems that we see now because teams don't waste any time. You got a prospect in the minor leagues, let's get them up, and we don't want them to get hurt. We're going to get them up to the big leagues and let them play. And I think consequently, that's what you see. That's the product that you see.
Yeah, they sure don't nurture them the same way, and I agree with you. I think a lot of them are overwhelmed when they first get there. They don't have the proper training to be in that situation quite that early.
Terry Francona said that, well, he was a long-time minor league manager, that prospects need 1,500 minor league at-bats to be ready for the major leagues. Do you agree with that, guys?
They used to have a formula back then. So many innings pitched, so many at bats, so many games played. Obviously there are some who are, ready ahead of the schedule. But yeah, pretty much the Dodgers, they were pretty much willing to nurture us for at least 3 years before, there was any real opportunity. And I think that was about right.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to be on the road, go through a full year, experience the ups and downs, how to get in it, how to get out of it. Sometimes they push you so fast you can't get through some of those training periods. And
Well, the other thing I get a kick out of too, Ron, is that little I watch on the game now. If I'm out at the ballpark doing an appearance or something, I watch a little bit. But I see these guys; they're all hugging each other, the opposition, and they're talking to each other and everything. I remember when we had the fraternizing rules. I don't
Yep.
remember when it stopped, and if you had it in the
Oh, we
'70s.
did.
they had these fraternizing rules that you really couldn't talk to the opposition. I kind
Yeah.
of like that because, but now I see guys that are hugging each other and they're kidding around and
Yeah.
it's a little different look for me than I remember. But
Well, they're
it's
miking
just
them
in the
up. They're miking them up these days on the field,
yeah,
which I don't like, but
well,
they're
it's
paying them
gimmick
to do it. It's
baseball,
part of the basic agreement. Anyway, what I need to say here is that we left so much on the table. Art, we're winding down here. We're in our last minute of this, and I would love an opportunity to cover the rest of what we left out there. Your books, your opportunity to do work in baseball with the Israel baseball team. You're an ambassador. We left that out there. We have an agenda that we couldn't quite cover all of that, but I certainly am thrilled that you were able to be with us today. I loved your stories and your experience. Like I said earlier, it was old home week, and can't thank you enough for joining us today.
well, let's do it again. My pleasure. Anytime.
All right, Art. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Art Shamsky, world champion with the 69 Miracle Mets. We'll be right back. We'll see about that right after this message. Thank you so much. It was great. You
My pleasure. No, you did a great job.
warmly touched me today. That was great going back through those names and times. Yeah,
Yeah.
what a different game they're playing today.
Is are some of the guys that you played with still around?
It's getting about that time where we're not quite as elbow to elbow anymore. I just stepped away from the Dodgers about 3 years ago, and we still had a real good number of alumni that would still participate. They don't care in the same way anymore, so that list is dwindling. We used to have fantasy camps that we would do together. The old Brooklyn.
Vets are like that too. They don't. I'm doing a fan fest up there next weekend, but they're not a team that relishes their past, even though you'd think they would be because that '69 team was so special. But
Sure.
they're not. It isn't what it is. I was just curious. Is guys like Jimmy Lefevre still around?
Jimmy is around, but he's in a wheelchair. He needs
Gee, how
help.
about Wes Parker?
Wes is around, but he's not available. He really didn't really participate much with some of the events that we had over the course of the. I worked for 25 years in the inner office, and
Yeah.
I can tell you that I'm the only one who sat in that position, and to see where they decided to take our history and tradition. They want it to be about them and today and what's going on, and it's as simple
Yeah,
as
no,
that.
I agree with you. I see that even the Mets, it's all about marketing to the young crowd. They're really most of their marketing is from '86 to early 2000s with Piazza and then David Wright.
Right.
And I don't know what happened to tradition in the game. Tradition is gone by the wayside. Although I would have thought the Dodgers would be do it because of their history, and then maybe the Giants. I know the Cardinals do it to some extent, Boston a little bit, Cubs a little bit, but I think most of these teams now it's all about
Yeah,
marketing to the young
and
and,
you
and,
named
and
all
really,
the teams that were part of the rich history and tradition of this game. You named all of them. Of course, the Yankees sit up top, but the idea. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I got involved with this. I loved reading about the teams and the players and all of this stuff when money wasn't an issue. Growing up in the '60s, '50s, actually, it was a first team that I could remember citing pretty much their whole roster was the '55 Braves,
yeah.
and I was 7 years old, and I just loved it. Fell in love with Willie Mays, and he was my guy, and the fact that I got to play with all those pitchers that you named, was just quite a thrill. I
Well,
considered it the
you
golden
can
era. I
probably
really
just
do.
say it wasn't fun, but it was wonderful.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was. You're right. And what's fun is that I had some moments that I can relate to with Seaver and Nolan Ryan and Pete Rose and all the other great ones that played. I have an experience of that, and Henry Aaron. I got to play in Henry's game that he broke Babe Ruth's all-time home run record back in '74. So just some tremendous experiences and memories.
Those are great memories. Don't lose
Yeah,
them.
for sure. Art, thank you so much.
My
I would
pleasure.
love to have you
Anytime, man.
back.
Just contact me. You got my
Got
email.
it.
Let me
Got
know,
it.
and give me if you want to do it again. Just
Got
let
it.
me give me a couple options, and
Got it.
we'll do it.
Great. Thanks, Art. I appreciate it.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Take care,
You
guys.
too.
Happy New
Bye-bye.
Year.
Bye-bye. You too. Yeah, I thought he did great. He took the ball and ran with it, and boy, he warmed my heart. All those players that he named, man, he just right up my alley. Plus, just what went on. It was important to do things right. He looked like he, played the game, the right way and learned it the right way and understood it the right way. Great experience. The times are, so different. These kids today, the things that we fought for back in the 70s and even before in the 60s when, it was just starting to be an issue about, how this is all coming down, the sacrifices that were made. These kids don't know anything about it, don't care anything about it. The pension to them is meal money. Means. Oh, we get a pension benefit. Ah.
Yeah, right. No, but it's like that's life. Unfortunately, it all makes changes, man. Industry.
I appreciate history. It is, something that I wanted. It was the lure. Wow. Getting, I got a chance to play, Major League Baseball. I get to, I will never forget this. It was the first and only epiphany I've ever had. It was on the backfield of the boys' club, the main field, the best field. It was 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. It was probably, 70 degrees outside. And I walked up to the plate for the first time, and, I'm probably 9 years old, 8 years old, somewhere in there. And I said, wow, this is a beautiful day, and wouldn't it be great if I could play this game every day, every single day? And I remember that like it just opened up and said, this is what you want to do, enjoy it. Yeah. Boom, here it is. And it spoke to me. And that's the only time I've had anything like that, any revelation like that ever happened to me. But it was, look, I look back on it now and I'm one lucky person, not only because I made it against those odds, but, I thought I was better than anybody would eventually give me credit to be. And I thought, looking back on it now, I was really lucky. There are so many guys. You look at basketball today, you talk about opportunities. The first round of basketball is really it. That's 30 guys. The second round, those kids are going to the D League or the G League or whatever they call it.
Playing in China.
Right. 30 guys. Are you telling me that college basketball is not better than that? I think there's plenty of kids that play in the NBA, but there's just not that door that's open,
Even if they go to 2 more teams, which they will be doing.
Would you, honestly, this nepotism thing with the Lakers, Bronny James, right? It was confirmed. Jim Hill confirmed everything that I had to say about the demands that they said they made. Say, hey, if you guys are thinking about, if you're not the Lakers and you're thinking about drafting Bronny James, don't, because he's not going to play for you.
Yeah.
We'll send him someplace else.
Not only that, they said that if you do draft Ronnie James, no player that's represented by Clutch Sports will sign with you.
Oh, okay, that's another step. But, look, you look at it and you say, and even my son said, don't be upset by that thing. He said the guys in the second round, hardly any of them. It's just, it means that, I mean, look, 30 guys? What if you said that to baseball? 30 guys? Are you kidding me? Only first rounders can I mean, everybody, I mean, there's plenty of guys. Just, yeah.
Look at Mike Piazza.
Well, I mean, if you look at, well, I mean, look, similar example. You've heard of Team USA. Okay, Team USA is the cream of the crop. Okay, they take all the best players from all the colleges and they throw them in here and boom, boom, boom. But there's a prerequisite to it. There's a standard to it. And let's just say it's 6 foot, 200 pounds, and you throw 95 miles an hour. Okay, you're a candidate. Randy Jones. What about Randy Jones? Randy Jones was the pitcher for the Padres in the 70s that couldn't break a pane of glass, much like Tommy John, but he threw strikes and his ball moved a lot and he won 20 games and he was a Cy Young Award winner. He wouldn't get invited to the camp. Hey, I can play. No, you can't. You get out of here,
They don't want you.
Yeah, you can't throw the fastball 85 miles an hour at least. Forget about it. What about a guy in college, or a guy in high school when I was playing, 220-pound offensive lineman? Where are you going to play? Nowhere. Right. You got to weigh 300 pounds. I mean, don't even think about it. You'd get crushed. But, I mean, there's all kinds of examples. Look at Piazza. Piazza was a token choice.
Exactly correct.
Right?
Common.
Hey, the last person in the draft, hey, how about you just, draft my grandson? Take him over here and, just put him on the roster, please. He goes to Miami, he ends up transferring into University of Miami after I think he went to
It's 153. Anything specific you wanted to hit here in this? Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we should do it. We should do Jimmy Carter in the last segment. Yeah. Sure.
Well, you're going to talk about the games tonight.
Yeah, we got to be kind of a little bit broad about this.
Okay, sorry.
By the time they could,
Yeah.
all I can tell you.
Yeah.
I think maybe we should just mention too that all the top seeds that had buys lost.
It's something. You have to.
No, we'll do that. Let's do that. Let's talk about.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Here we go. All right. This is an editing pickup. We're circling back to the open here. So this is the open, and on the file, it's going to be at 49:30 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's We'll See About That with World Series MVP Ron Cey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We'll See About That. Ron Cey here with Mike Gary, and I hope that all of you have returned after the new year, having a great time with your family and friends. And Unfortunately, the new year has not gotten off to a great start here in Southern California, and right now the main news is about all the horrific firestorms that are going on here. The winds are unbelievably high. It has been devastating Southern California here for days now. Mike, what's the situation near your house?
Yeah, I'm close to the Eaton fire, about 7 miles away. So very, very smoky. I have some family members under evacuation. It's a scary time. The winds were unbelievable, hurricane force. I lost my fence in my backyard, but so many others have lost, way more. So our thoughts and prayers are with them. And I just want to say, if you are, get that order to evacuate, because things move real fast.
Yeah, there's no question, because that devastating fire that just destroyed the Palisades, there was no time in there, and the Coast Highway was blocked up, and it was just a nightmare for so many people that lost just about everything they had. And I've been reading on Instagram many stories about the devastation, the loss of how it affected all these people, and it is just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of somebody who has gone kind of through this a little bit, when you do evacuate, don't grab your TVs, don't grab all that. What you want to grab is your important documents and your family photos, because those things, you can replace a TV, you can replace your couch and your stereo, but those, precious memories and mementos, those are what you want to take out.
Yeah, for sure. And if there was advice that I could give you, stay away from the chaos. You don't need to go down to the Coast Highway to see how things are. You'll have plenty of time to see that over the course of the next couple of months. Anyway, that's such a sad story to have to start out this year. I remember Davey Lopes when he was playing with us. He lived in the Palisades. What a beautiful community that was. And to see that, along with all the other places, just go up. I had 100-mile-an-hour winds, as they said, in Woodland Hills, and I'm right out there getting hit in the face. The good part about it for us is that we get the strong winds, but the winds blow that problem right over to the beach. So we stayed out of harm's way in that way, but I got a lot of work to do at the house, cleaning up for sure. Anyway, we're so glad to have you all back. I hope that your situation is much better than the one that we're experiencing here in Southern California. And we will be right back we'll see about that right after this message.
No, that was very well done, though. Great tone. Great. You handled that very, very well. Very classy. All right, here we go for the close. Just make sure to plug the book and the website and Instagram. All right, this is editing pickup. This is segment 5. After 1, 5, and pickup at 53:30 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey Ron, how you doing?
Okay, welcome to We'll See About That. We are
How you doing it?
finalizing our last segment here, and want to let you know that please visit the website, theronsayshow.com. We have plenty of options over there for the book Penguin Power, and please take a look at that. We have our podcast menu with our guest list there, and it can be accessed from the website itself, so please take a look at that. Love to have you join us, and we are also carried by Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, Roku, and others. And don't want to leave out a very important mentioning of Jimmy Carter passing. Lived to be 100 years old, and what an incredible time that he had in office as well.
Yeah, true statesman, and especially after leaving office, dedicating his life to Habitat for Humanity, and also just the great love that he had for Rosalind, which was so evident.
Yes, and so I hope that all our condolences to the family are well taken.
Absolutely. Ron, real fast, let's talk about the college football. All 4 first seeds, top seeds, including your Oregon Ducks, all got creamed.
Yeah, they did.
All the teams that had byes in the college football playoff lost. What do you attribute that to?
You know what? If I had an answer, I'm sure they would bottle it. But I was really disappointed. The only team that really, the only game was the Texas-Arizona State game. And you know what? Arizona State had 3 different separate opportunities to put that game away and couldn't. I felt really bad. You know, they had a missed field goal, that bounced through the upright. Did you remember seeing that one? Did you know that is a field goal? That is a real field goal, and they did not count it. And I thought the same thing. But I just read this article about it. It said that field goal that Arizona State that bounced in front of the goal line and then bounced over and through the uprights was actually a field goal.
All I know is that Oregon team maybe spent a little bit too long in Hollywood at some of the adult establishments before that Rose Bowl game.
They did not recover from the onslaught. You know, Ohio State got off to a great start, hey, right now they look like the favorite. Penn State and Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State. All the pro games are coming up this weekend, too, the first rounds of the playoffs. So a lot of exciting football waiting for you this weekend. Thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful weekend. See you next time around. Thanks for joining us.
Very nicely done. Hey, Brad, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm all right.
You picked
I'm in Miami.
You picked a heck of a week to go out of town, pal.
I picked the best week to go out of town, right?
I know you sure did. You sure did.
Well, although Nick was at home with a house sitter and had to evacuate get the animals out and talk about nuttiness. But you know, hey, it's all good.
Especially when you're on the other side of the country and you can't be any help.
That must be very nerve-wracking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I looked at it as, you know what? I trust my son. I trust the person I had who's house sitting, and I gave them. We talked the night before they got the instructions to leave. We made plans. They executed it. I mean, I actually called them. I mean, I was awake at 8 a.m. when the 5 a.m. Pacific evacuation order came through, and I was calling them before they called me. So I'm like, hey, you guys know what to do. You know.
Is this because of the Palisades fire or because of the Pasadena fire?
No, Pasadena.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was I mean, Pasadena, Altadena is devastated. I mean, there is I've got friends, I've got family, and I have clients that have lost homes. My older brother's wife, some of her relatives died.
Oh, no.
I mean,